tiny landlocked country with no army, no ocean access, no oil, and no empire, somehow controls a quarter of all the private wealth on Earth. Here's how Switzerland became the world's vault. It starts in the 1500s, not with bankers, but with refugees. Thousands of French Protestants, called Huguenots, were fleeing religious persecution across Europe. Many of them ended up in Geneva, Basel, and Zurich. These weren't poor migrants. They were skilled merchants, craftsmen, and businessmen. They brought money. They built industries, and that capital needed somewhere to go. At the same time, Switzerland sat at the most valuable crossroads in Europe. The Alpine passes it controlled were the only land routes connecting Italy and the Mediterranean to northern Europe. Every merchant, every army, every trade convoy passed through Swiss territory. Where trade flows, money follows. And where money flows, banking follows. But here's where it gets really interesting. In 1713, the Grand Council of Geneva passed a law that would quietly reshape global finance forever. Bankers were forbidden from sharing client information with anyone, not foreign governments, not competitors, not even Swiss authorities. Discretion wasn't just a courtesy, it was now the law, and business was booming. By the late 1700s, European aristocrats were terrified. Revolutions were breaking out. Governments were collapsing. Tax collectors were multiplying. Wealthy families across the continent needed somewhere safe to park their fortunes. And Switzerland offered exactly what they wanted: stability, neutrality, and silence. Then, in 1815, Switzerland got its biggest break yet. After the Napoleonic Wars, the great powers of Europe met in Vienna to redraw the map. And in that meeting, they did something extraordinary. They formally declared Switzerland permanently neutral. No wars, no alliances, no sides. For Switzerland, this was a business opportunity disguised as a peace treaty. Capital flooded in from every direction. The French banked in Geneva, the Italians in Lugano, the Germans in Zurich. Swiss banking wasn't just growing, it was becoming a system. Stock exchanges opened, major banks were founded, and in 1907, the Swiss National Bank was established, anchoring one of the most stable currencies in the world. But the real explosion came in the 20th century, because the 20th century was chaos. World War I brought something new and terrifying to the wealthy: progressive income taxes. France and Germany started taxing large fortunes at higher rates to fund the war. So Swiss bankers did something clever. They traveled directly to Paris, handing out brochures and personally approaching wealthy clients, advertising Switzerland as a place where no one would ask questions. It worked. Enormous sums crossed the border. And when the Great Depression hit and France raided Swiss bank offices in Paris in 1932, discovering just how much money had been quietly moved out, Switzerland responded not by backing down, but by doubling down. In 1934, they passed the Federal Banking Act. Article 47 made it a federal criminal offense to reveal a client's banking information to anyone. Prison time. No exceptions. Swiss bankers would later compare their code of silence to that of a priest or a doctor. Except this confession booth had a combination lock. World War II made Switzerland the financial center of the planet. As Europe burned, Swiss vaults filled. Jewish families hid their savings there before fleeing the Nazis. Industrialists moved assets ahead of Allied bombing. Gold, from governments, from conquests, from places best left unspoken, flowed through Zurich. Switzerland was officially neutral. Its banks were anything but idle. When the war ended, Switzerland emerged intact, physically, financially, and quietly richer than ever. The Cold War kept the momentum going. In a world where any government could collapse overnight, the Swiss franc was the closest thing to a guaranteed safe haven. Numbered accounts, where even the bankers didn't know the client's real identity, became the stuff of legend. Dictators, oligarchs, Corporations and billionaires all came knocking. By the 1980s, Switzerland managed assets worth several times its own GDP. Zurich briefly ranked among the largest financial centers on Earth. The system worked perfectly for everyone, including people it really shouldn't have worked for. Tax evaders, arms dealers, organized crime. The same law that protected refugees also protected criminals. Nobody was asking questions. That was the point. Then, slowly, the walls started closing in. In the 1990s, Jewish organizations discovered a brutal irony. Holocaust victims had deposited their savings in Swiss banks before the war, and their surviving families couldn't get the money back. Swiss banks demanded death certificates for people murdered in concentration camps. The Nazis didn't issue death certificates. After years of legal battles and global pressure, Swiss banks paid $1.25 billion in settlements. The 2008 financial crisis cracked things open further. UBS, one of Switzerland's biggest banks, needed a $60 billion government bailout. The USIRS came after American tax evaders hiding money at UBS, and this time, Switzerland handed over names. The secrecy that had held for nearly 3 centuries started to crack. By 2017, automatic tax information sharing with European nations began. The era of truly secret Swiss banking was officially over, at least on paper. And in 2023, Credit Suisse, one of the most iconic names in global finance, collapsed entirely and was absorbed by UBS in an emergency rescue. And yet, Switzerland still manages around 8 trillion Swiss francs in assets. It's still home to over 200 banks. Finance still makes up nearly 10% of its entire economy. Here's the thing about Switzerland. It didn't stumble into becoming the world's bank. It made a calculated, centuries-long decision to sell something that every wealthy person in an unstable world desperately wants: safety, silence, and the confidence that no one is coming for their money. The world kept changing. Switzerland kept its promise. And that, more than anything, is why the money never really left.